Alright, so what in the world are the Graph www macros? For anyone who's used Graph, you've probably had some experience with the MS macros. It's probably the first one that most people learn because of the amount of resources on the MS macros. But there's a lot of other macros that people use. And one of those, one of the lesser, I guess, used ones nowadays is the www macros, which you can sort of infer from the name has to do with making simple websites. And that's exactly what it was designed for. It sort of feels like a primitive markdown kind of language. And it's sort of a fun little relic that I like to play around with. So if you've sort of got a passion for retro 90s style web pages, it's something that's fun to play around with. So as we can see, we're looking at the man page right now, and there's a handful of macros, and they sort of have a very familiar feel if you've used the MS macros before, but they're very much more web centric. So for example, you've got a macro for URLs, for A tags, FTP, which no one uses anymore, mail to, headings, ordered lists, unordered lists. You can put custom tags in the head. There's all sorts of sort of web centric things here that you don't get with other macro packages. And actually you can see the macro package itself if you visit it here. At least this is where it is on Debian distributions. You can check in your distribution if it's in the same location. But I'll just pull it up real quick. It's actually a fairly small macro package, being about 1,600 lines here, and you can just sort of poke through it, and see how it works. But it's sort of very accessible, I would say. But anyways, enough about what it is. Let's actually look at an example. So all that out of the way, let's actually look at how to create a Graph www document. So let's just create one in Vim. I'm going to call it index.www. Now, it actually doesn't matter what your file extension is, as long as it's a plain text file. It's not an issue. So let's just do index.www. You're not going to get any syntax highlighting. It's not that well supported. But regardless, here we are. Let's get started. So the first thing you probably want to do when you're making a website is to add some sort of title. So let's do that. The macro for creating a title is HNS, and you're going to close it off with HNE, obviously for heading start and for heading end. And this macro actually takes a single numerical parameter. It defaults to a second level heading, so if you don't put anything in there, it's going to be H2. That's the tag that it's going to put out into your document. But for our purposes, we want a first level heading because this is the title of our website. So how you're going to do that is put in a 0 because it's 0 indexed. Sort of feels very computer sciencey, I guess. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to put your text, you're going to put your title right here, and just say this is my title. Very straightforward. Again, we're just going to close these off in these tags, and now you have this heading. The next thing you probably want to do is put some paragraph text down, and like most sort of markdown style languages, LaTeX, it's going to be very similar, where you just write some text, and this will all be body text in p tags. So I just want you to notice that even though we've written a HTML tag right here, this is not going to get interpreted as HTML, which is a good thing. So you can actually just write code snippets and stuff right into the document with ease. But anyways, if I drop down to a new line, this is actually not going to create a new paragraph. This is just going to continue the last paragraph. Now, if I wanted to create a new paragraph, I just add an extra line. Again, a lot like LaTeX or Markdown. And what we can do is we can just keep writing. This will be more paragraph text. Now, the next thing you probably want to do on a web page is link to other web pages. That's sort of, the whole point of it, right? So you can do that using the URL macro. And the URL macro takes two parameters. And we make sure we put those in quotation marks. But the first one is going to be our URL, and the next is going to be the linked text. So what we're going to do, let's just say we're going to put in https wibby.me. And for those of you who don't know, wibby.me is a cool search engine that indexes only simple and minimalist HTML sites. It archives both, real retro sites, and it also archives people's sites and indexes people's sites who are creating simple web, 1.0 websites today. So it's a cool thing to check out if you've never done that and you're into like old retro style websites. But then we're going to put in some text, so it's going to be simple sites found here. And this is going to be part of our paragraph. But again, remember, because this is a graph package, the argument, any macro has to be the first thing on the line. So if I brought this up to this line, this would not be interpreted, this whole thing would not be interpreted as a URL. It would be interpreted as plain text. So this is going to now be a URL, not a URL. Very simple. If we drop to the next line, we can just keep writing. And this will be one paragraph. All right. So this is really, the basics. Let's just go over one more thing before we actually get into compiling. And let's do a list. So let's do an ordered list. So again, similar to the heading, it's just going to be ordered list start and ordered list end. And each list item, to create a new list item, you're going to use the .li macro. And everything that is a list item is going to go underneath. So this is going to be similar if you're familiar with the MS macro package. If you have a .pp for a new paragraph, all the text will go here. So we're going to do that. Same thing with li. So let's say this is list item 1 and list item 2. All right, we've got a very simple website. We've got 2 paragraphs, a URL, and an ordered list along with a heading. So let's see what happens. So to compile them, make sure we've got that written. To compile, we can do this right here from command mode. If you don't know, you can actually just execute bash commands right from Vim with the exclamation point. So let's do that. I'm going to type in graph, call it on the current file. If you didn't know, the %sign actually just calls the command right on this file. And then we're going to call the macro package, which is www, the device, which is HTML, and we're going to output to index.html. So let's run that and see what happens. All right, we got no output, so that means we did it right. And let's take a look at the actual file before we open it up. So let's call vim on index.html, output to the home directory. And we can see right here we've got an HTML document. At the head, we've got a bunch of boilerplate, just a comment saying that it was created in Graph, some meta tags, and then a default style sheet to sort of remove some of the, sort of a reset style sheet to remove some of the default stylings that come with browsers. So we can see up here that we have our heading, and we have our 2 paragraphs along with an ordered list. Notice that the ordered list is actually set into its own paragraph. Also notice that our p tag, the pointing brackets, have been replaced with HTML entities, so it actually doesn't get interpreted as HTML in our browser. And then, of course, we have our link. So let's take a look, because there are some other things in this document that I haven't gone over yet. It's a little more difficult when you're looking at the HTML to explain, but let's go and look at this site. So here's the site in the Qt browser, and we can see that we've got our title, our 2 paragraphs, a link, and a list. But we've also got this sort of what I would call a table of contents at the top of the document. And what this is for every single heading, it's actually going to sort of generate this table of contents so it's easier to navigate your site. It sort of acts as sort of a pseudo nav bar, but it's you sort of see this with HTML or with Wikipedia, where you can actually just jump to different section headings really quickly. If you don't like it, you can disable it, but I think it's a nice feature that existed on old websites, which you just don't see as much anymore today. So I like it. It's a nice little feature, and it gives your site sort of a very retro feel. But anyways, there's a lot more you can do. I don't want to go too much into it and bore you. I think it's a lot more fun to sort of dig into the man page yourself, learn about the different macros, and sort of get a handle on on what you can do with it yourself. One of my favorite features, which I didn't go over today, is this macro, the job name, which actually allows you to output the HTML into multiple different files. So if you have a multi sort of page article that you want to split up by different headings or a blog or something like that, this job name is a lot of fun to work with. Maybe I'll do a video on that, because it's you know, it's a little tricky to figure out how it works, but once you figure it out, it's actually something that's very fun to play around with. But anyways, you can really just start messing around with this and start creating very retro feeling websites, you know, the way that the internet intended. And yeah, that's about all.